It looks like the flood of people has receded, so we keep an eye on it. But let's make a start then, because I know one person who I won't name is anxious for his supper. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to this event, Black Lives Matter: Poems for a New World. My name's Trevor Wright, and I'm one of the organisers of the Derby Poetry Festival. The festival normally takes place over a long weekend in November, so for understandable reasons we weren't really able to do that. And one of the things that we had talked about was getting Ambrose along to do something for us. And this anthology that we're going to hear readings from, I think, was published in the autumn last year. And if I'm right, Ambrose, not really done a proper launch. So this, in effect, is the first opportunity that people had. So we've kind of come together as a festival with Ambrose and Civic Leicester to put this on tonight for you. We've only been able to do it with the support from Derby Live, who've handled the ticket booking for us, and Derby Libraries, who've provided some of the funding for it as well. So a quick thanks to both of those. What we thought is if we could start off with just a quick couple of introductions from Henderson and Cecile and Ambrose, and then we'll just get straight into the poetry and discussion. So do you want to just say a bit yourself, Ambrose?
Okay, so I think the only thing that I can maybe I'll start like this. I'll start by thanking you all for coming today, and also thank you for your contribution to the poetry anthology. So the anthology came out after a call for submissions that was issued in June, looking for poems responding to the theme Black Lives Matter, and we were looking for basically, really, we were looking for people's responses, how people responded to Black Lives Matter, how they understood it, what they saw as happening, and we kept the how people responded. We left it to them, really. The only restrictions that we stressed were around the length of the submissions, and also so we received over 500 submissions from writers around the world. From there, we selected 107 from 95. And the reason why those 107 were selected were how they spoke to each other. What made it difficult, what made the anthology difficult was as an anthology, what made it difficult, part of what made it difficult was that the call came out shortly after after the killing of George Floyd. So most of the submissions were about that. But we couldn't have the anthology just be, we wanted the anthology to be broader, to reflect that this movement is actually broad, that the demands that the Black Lives Matter movement is making, they've been making them for quite some time. And we wanted to hear from as many people and as many voices, as many of the themes as possible. I don't know if there's anything. Okay, the only other thing that I can say is that the hope that I have with this anthology is that we are starting, or we are opening the door, and we are keeping it open so that we can have the conversations that need to be had. Also, because sometimes when what maintains violence is language and silence. So hopefully through our contribution as writers, as poets, we will ensure that things that need to be said get said. We will make sure that the silence that is there in many places around racialized inequalities and violence, we talk back, and hopefully by doing that we will be part of the process of dismantling institutionalized and structural racism and violence. I think this is what I hope, part of what I hope the anthology will do.
Lovely, yeah, thank you, Ambrose. Yeah, and one of the things we want to think about as we go through is kind of the role of not just poetry but creative writing in making a better world. Could I ask Cecile to just say a few words about yourself and kind of your interest in creative writing then, please? Are you there, Cecile?
Yeah, you're mute.
It would help. Once again, thank you, Trevor, for inviting me to this evening's event. I feel quite privileged to be invited along today to hear the written words of our writers. Writing the written word is an essential part of my living world. I am an academic based at the University of Nottingham. I'm a professor, and much of my adult life has been about using the written word through research, papers, articles, books, using the written word to bring to voice, allow others to come to voice, very much along the lines of what Ambrose has said, to give a voice, particularly to those in our society that have to run the gauntlet of institutional, systemic, endemic, racial and class oppression. So the written word means an awful lot to me, whilst the written words that I have contributed to have not been poetry as such. My parents were part of the Windrush generation, and one of the reasons, a central reason for my parents coming to the UK was to not only be invited over to help build a very diminished Britain after the Second World War, but they came because they believed that Britain had an education system that would enable them to have their children educated, so that through that education they can be empowered. My parents' mantra was, they can take an awful lot from you, but once you have an education, that cannot be taken from you. And that education, illustrative of that education, is obviously being able to use the written words to articulate a position. And hopefully what I've done over the years has not been destructive. The corollary is that the written word, part of the written word in relation to racial struggle, class struggle in Britain today, is being used against the oppressed. So whilst the written word can be liberating, can liberate the individual, empower the individual, one should also be aware that the written word is also used to enslave and oppress. So I'm looking forward to the creativity that you all will be sharing this evening. Once again, thank you for the invitation.
No, thank you for joining us, Cecile, and hope to hear more from you later. And that kind of links in nicely with Henderson and Henderson's role in Writing East Midlands. So do you want to introduce yourself as well, Henderson?
Sure, Henderson Mullin, from, as Trevor says, from Writing East Midlands, which is a literature development agency for the region. So we work with writers. It says on the can. I'm going to keep this short, mainly because more articulate words than mine need to be heard this evening. And also, I'm going to keep it fairly somber, which is not my normal state, if anybody knows me. But I do feel particularly somber tonight because of the fact that we're here, to be honest, and having this conversation. I'll start off though by saying thanks, really thanks to and congratulations to Ambrose and everybody else who's put this anthology together, and a choir of voices, which is how I felt when I went through it, as a choir of voices here singing the same song, chanting even the same song for justice and equality, and in what is a very moving piece of work. And also Trevor, thanks to Trevor for his involvement in putting the evening together. I'm sure there's others involved too, so thanks to all. I'm involved with writers. That's what Writing East Midlands does. We identify writers, we develop writers, we help writers get to the next step. My background, though, is in human rights publishing. My interest was to bring marginalized voices that don't have a platform, voices, as Cecile was saying, of the oppressed. I'm from the same generation, and that can't find a place in the mainstream. And if you don't have a place with your words in the mainstream, then you're always going to stay under somebody's heel. So that's been my kind of thing, really, and it remains so. It hasn't really changed. I sometimes ask myself, though, what are writers for? And yeah, I know they tell stories, yes, of course, and they chronicle the times as well. Yes, great, okay. But what I really think they're for is times like these. They stand up and they say, look at this, it's wrong, let's change it. And they galvanize forces and people around them, which is what Black Lives Matter is about, I think, at its heart. For someone who's getting on a bit like me, it's quite gratifying to see the return of what we used to call back in the day black consciousness, which is frightening for some people, but it was never negative. What it was about is looking around you and recognizing what was around you and seeing things for what they are and calling them what they were. I thought it was lost. So if there's anything that good can be found out of George Floyd's murder, it's that. And it's a reminder that James Baldwin said, ignorance allied with power is the greatest enemy that justice can have. And that's what words are there for. Our words are there for, your words are there for. It's to oppose, I think, ignorance and therefore gain justice. I can remember being a much younger man. I'm getting all age tonight. I can remember being a younger man and getting on a coach from Leicester to go down to London. for an apartheid march. There might have been other reasons for getting on it. I think her name was Carmel at the time, but that's another story. And it was just amazing things we did. And I remember that particular trip. At the end of one of the speeches, some words were read out which have remained with me. And it were these words: merely by describing yourself as black, you have started on a road toward emancipation. You have committed yourself to fight against all forces that seek to use your blackness as a stamp that marks you out as a subservient being. Those words have stayed with me. They're kind of like inside me. And they were spoken by Steve Biko. Anyway, that's my piece. It's good to be here.
Here.
Yeah, thank you, Henderson, and as with Cecile, and we'll come back to you as we go along. Okay, there's been quite a few joined us since we started. We're now over 50. Still a couple of people coming in. So just a reminder to those that weren't here at the beginning that Civic Leicester are recording, and the recording will be posted on the Civic Leicester website in a few days. So if you don't want to be seen, then switch your cameras off. And to avoid echoes, could people also unmute and then, mute and then unmute if we take part in the discussion. And then lastly, Ambrose and myself take it in turns to keep an eye on chat. So if you've got any queries, any problems, any comments, stick them in chat and we'll try and kind of pull out some themes as we go along. So enough of that, enough from me. What we wanted to do was, as it's Derby Poetry Festival, was to try and get somebody local to read a poem, and I can see him there. So we've got Tony Lambu from Derby who's going to kick us off with his poem. Off to you, Tony. And you need to unmute. You're muted, Tony.
Press the microphone.
Yeah. The dreaded mute. We all do it. Yeah, I didn't know that I was going to be first, so I'll give my hair a quick brush through. But yeah, this piece is called Blackness, and it's a 1 minute piece, so I've got about a minute to speak. But I did it not out of frustration. I was sat in my living room, and I was I think it was news night, and I felt like this lady was apologizing for being black. And I'm like, you're an educated person, you're going on there, and it sounds like you are apologizing. And I was like, I can feel, you know, when you get that urge that, yeah, something's going to be written here. And I'm thinking, I'm going to write something. And I just wrote down, unapologetic. And I thought, yeah, apologizing, I'm not feeling it. So I wrote this piece. I wrote it on the 18th of the 10th, 2020. And I called it Blackness. And are you sitting comfortably? Nod, wave your hands. Let's be, let me see the people out there. Yep, that's good. Here goes, countdown 3, 2, 1, and it's called Blackness. Unapologetically black. My skin don't crack, that's a fact. Check it out and see it's not a mystery. Our history isn't 400 years. It don't begin and end in tears. Built and governed great civilizations. Ignore the white man's recriminations. Unapologetically melanated. Darker than midnight. Don't get a fright. Don't need a tan or colour from a can. Don't need factor 50. Don't need your pity. Unapologetically not sorry. Standing tall like a Maasai warrior. Hair defying gravity. full lips and hips, oozing masculinity, still got the scars from the whips. Globally, it's the white minority, the black-brown majority. No one mentions that. It's a fact that I'm unapologetically black. End. So, and you know what the frightening thing about that is that, you know, when you're so incensed and literally the words are flying off your pen, or you're typing it and you're almost trying to like hold them back, it just flew off. And it's one of my top 3 pieces, and I hope it resonated with you folks out there, all these beautiful faces. And it's a pleasure to go first. Now I can sit back and relax.
Thanks, Tony. I think that's a statement of intent that's got enough to a really good start, and your hair looks fine as well. Okay, so as Ambrose was saying, I think there's over 500 contributions to the anthology, and about 107 were accepted. We've got 12 of those tonight. We've tried to kind of get some of those 12 to be people from Derbyshire, Leicester, Nottinghamshire. So I can see a few faces there that are familiar. So Ambrose is going to introduce the poets from the anthology. I'm looking forward to this. Ambrose.
All right. So, okay. So one of the things that I found challenging when I was putting this together was what order? How do I arrange the poems in the anthology? Who comes first? Who follows them? How do I arrange the themes? That was very difficult. So what I did was I did use the device that people who put anthologies together sometimes use from time to time, where they arrange things by alphabetical order. So that's what I did. I arranged the submissions by order, alphabetical order, going by surname. But for this reading, the order in which people are going to read is not necessarily the order in which they appear. I tried to mix things up a little bit, and because of that, we are going to start by hearing from Deborah Tyler-Bennett. Debs, when you're ready.
Thank you, and thank you so much, Ambrose, for inviting me, and also for the fantastic anthology, which I was rereading today, and I really did love the way the poems did speak to each other, and that's so important to me as a poet. So just to say, in the poem that I wrote, I kept referencing a line from Walt Whitman where he said, "A man as divine as myself is dead." And the reason that I did that was this poem was written when I'd seen a TV piece on Errol Graham, who was around my age and who had died in Nottingham of starvation when his benefits were stopped. And while I was watching it, I kept thinking of that line from Whitman, and it wouldn't really leave me alone. And the idea that somebody in such a well-off country could starve and was only found because of bailiffs going to his house, I just couldn't really get to grips with it at all. And I remember walking through Nottingham shortly after, and there were posters everywhere that said "Proud of the City," and I'm from Nottinghamshire, and I often am proud of the city, but the whole combination kind of made me write this poem. And the other thing I kept thinking about was how people get demonized, and all these sort of TV programs where you get people called saints and scroungers and divided up into horrible sort of categories. So I called this poem Whitman, Lennon and Scroungers. The council's posting posters, proud of knots. Above the city, high-rise skeletons host calling workmen. Broadmarsh, 70s eyesore, now just craters, and local news, 2 bailiffs find a man at home, starved to death. You can't make poems from this, just be recording angel. Walt Whitman had it right, someone divine as anyone is dead. A scrounging government office clawing back his means. Official letters don't apologise. Just be recording angel, you can't make poems from this. Still, on the wall they're proud of knots, ambitious for their city and its people. A man divine as you or me is dead. Perhaps John Lennon's shade could lyricise cold water flats or public faces left in jars by doors, though even he might struggle. A man, last weight under 5 stone, is dead. Let Ghost Whitman or Lennon make a poem from this. Let them stand, supreme recording angels, defacing posters, boasting, proud of knots, with funeral blues for all the lonely people.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think the next person we are going to hear from is Sandra Agard. Sandra, maybe you also introduce yourself and then give the context of your poem. And
no problem. Thank you. I'd just like to say it's an honor to be here tonight with all you wonderful, wonderful poets. I'm very humbled, and thank you very much for inviting me and choosing my poem. It's been a long time since I've written any poetry to show the world. And Henderson, you said that your introduction was so wonderful. Everybody's introduction has been very good, but you used 3 words there, times like these. Back in the day when I was a young poet, a group of us got together, as you did, in as a community press, and wrote a book entitled Times Like These. That was a title from one of the poets of the day, Hugh Boatswain, and it was a poem, as you said, that talked about the times like these back in the early 80s, and to think that we're still going through times like these, it's just profound. So when you said that, my heart just jumped, you know, so beautiful words, thank you. But my poem, I've always been interested in history. History is a passion of mine, and Black history particularly. I was born here in Britain, and yeah, I'm first generation. My parents came from Guyana in the 50s, and myself and my 2 younger sisters, we were brought up here by my parents in London, and so history has always been important. So a lot of my poetry reflects history, and just a very short story. I'm a writer and a storyteller and a literature consultant. I'm very interested in history and libraries. I've worked for many years in library. I'm currently at the British Library as a learning facilitator. I thought I was going to retire, but life took a different turn, and I got this wonderful job at the British Library. And I remember when I was at school, I wrote a poem about what I considered about Black history. And it was a poem about us as Black people who had created nothing. and it went something. I've got it somewhere upstairs somewhere, and it goes, "We are a people, we've created nothing," and it went on and on about we as black people who've created nothing in society, and we had nothing to give. Well, I got an A+. I was so happy. You know, when you get an A+, age like 13, 14, you're happy. Ran home. Yeah, dad, got A+ for this poem. My dad took the poem and read it. And then he said, "Yeah, that's nice, Sandra." And then he sat me down and gave me a different history lesson. And I never forget that. And my father, Cecile Agard, he was very instrumental in myself and my sisters growing up, and he and my mother, Evelyn Agard, they taught us history, and we were very lucky at school. Went to a great school that we were very lucky in the early 70s and in the 80s to do Black history at school. So as a consequence, I'm very interested in history. So a lot of my poetry reflects that. And with the horrors that happened over last summer, and the marches that continue to happen. And we've seen that on January the 6th, what happened when the insurrection in America took place, compared to what happened in the summer when the National Guard came out and all the rest of it. Where was the National Guard on January the 6th? Well, and so I kept thinking, I mean, we're always seen as a threat. So I wrote this poem, and this is the poem that appears in the book. Am I a Threat? Part 1. Am I a threat? Why? When I birthed the world with my treasured lands, I created Axum, Ethiopia, where the Ark of the Covenant now sleeps. I stood with the black Nubians of Kush. I built the pyramids of ancient Egypt. I crossed the desert highways of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, with bountiful riches and tales of wonder and gods. I marched with Roman armies as commander and soldier, building roads, walls, and cities like Lydium, yes, London. I forged the Benin bronzes and carved drums to beat the hearts of my people then and now. I molded the Ashanti stool of a nation, our Sansom, our spirit, our soul. I shaped great Zimbabwe out of earth and stone. I rallied with Robert Winterbourne against the horrors endured by the enslaved in the streets of England. I survived countless treacherous crossings in choppy ocean shackles, chains, sweat, and blood. I became the Black Jacobins, leading a revolution in San Domingo, now known as Haiti. I knew Nani, Taki of the Maroons, Paul Bogle, Sam Sharp, Cuffy of Guyana, Zumbi of Brazil, all who paved the way to freedom in the sun. I wore the crown as Nefertiti, Cleopatra, Queen Nzinga, Yara Santiwa, Mary Seacole, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, Phyllis Wheatley, Claudia Jones. I spoke of John Henry, Henry Box Brown, Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Patrice Lumumba, Walter Rodney. I bear witness to the lives of Emmett Till, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Brenda Taylor, Atada Jefferson, Stephon Clark, Eric Gardner, Sandra Bland, Tamir Rice, Michael Brown, Rodney King, Mike Duggan, Sean Rigg, Jean-Charles Demendez, Rashad Charles, Joy Gardner, Cynthia Jarrett, Cherry Gross, The New Cross 13, 14, Stephen Lawrence, and all those whose names are lost in time and hang lifeless on twisted trees. An endless list that haunts and torments a world where justice is muted, silent, unjust, empty. Really? And you see me as the threat? Am I a 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 threat?
Yo, come on.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, so before we go on to the next poem, maybe what we do here is there are many of us here who are poets, who've got websites, who've got blogs. So shall we take a few minutes, if you would like others to come and see the work that you are doing, maybe you put it in the chat. Yeah, I'll start, or we can do it together at the same time. We're using the chat. Just put your details.
That invitation, please, Ambrose. I didn't understand it.
That many of us here have got websites, are writers, are poets. We've got websites. We've got things that we are working on. We've got things that we would like to share with others.
Yeah.
So maybe we take a few minutes to just imagine this as a writers' conference, like the one that Writing East Midlands organizes, where you exchange cards. Let's just use this to just exchange details if we're comfortable with that. So your website will be okay. Things that you're working on that you'd like others to know about. You've heard from me and the call for submissions that is looking for poems on settled status for all. I will also put it in the chat.
I have a question.
Yes.
Will we get access to this chat after? Because obviously there's a lot going on there that I will need to go back and.
Yes.
Thank you.
We will. We will send it out.
Thank you.
To all who we have contact details for. So you might also want to put your contact details in the chat if you'd like to receive a copy.
Is there any music you could play in the meantime?
Okay. I will.
Have you got any drum and bass?
I will line up a performance by Melo, my own favorite.
Compare that one to Alexa. Black Hole of the Sun.
Which one?
It's coming.
Yeah.
Alexa, turn it up.
Melo Bacco, you're in Derby.
I am right now. I feel like I am. No, I'm Leicester.
How come I've never seen you before?
Leicester.
Leicester. Oh, wow. Who said there was in Derby? Sorry, I thought it was you. Somebody in the chat. Oh, it was you, Claire. You're in Derby. Yeah, big up the Derby crew. Let's not talk football.
So the song that I'm going to play is called "Go Where I Go" by Melo.
Okay.
All right, and then we need to do a thing called share screen. Let me find it. We're still okay. So we'll listen maybe to a couple of minutes.
Thank you.
Okay. Laila, how do you do this? You've done this before. I remember you gave me instructions another time.
Hiya. So if you go to share screen, there's a little tiny box which says share computer sound. And you have to click that, otherwise we won't hear the sound.
Ambrose, I'm going to try and play some music until you do whatever you're doing.
Okay. I think that's fine. If you turn it up, that would be.
Turn it up. DJ Alexa.
Yes.
She sends messages back to the government for me.
Oh, she probably does.
I want her to.
I can't find.
Alexa.
Tune.
Okay, I think that we have. I think all of us who have who wanted to have shared details. So we go on to the next.
Alexa, stop. Alexa, stop.
Yeah. So the next we're going to hear, the next person who we're going to hear from is Catherine Okoronkwo. Catherine, maybe you also introduce yourself, contextualize the poem, and.
Thank you, Ambrose. Good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure being here and just having the opportunity to share my contribution. Thank you. The genesis of my poem, Rage Rises, well, just a bit of background. I hadn't been long in my first incumbency as a vicar of 2 churches in Swindon. That's in Bristol Diocese, some of you will know, when George Floyd's murder hit the headlines. And it really kind of sickened me that we still live in a world where a human being can be maltreated to the point of death just because he or she is Black. And I felt that I just had to speak into this space of racial injustice and inequality, particularly as I serve a church, that is the Church of England, an institution that has much to answer for in terms of its own stakes in this highly charged discourse. So this poem was my way of giving a voice to an individual and collective pain of the decades of the dehumanization of Black people, their minds, their bodies, and their spirits. So it's titled Rage Rises. Rage rises, tongues of flame, sear bones, sinew, and muscle, wrapped in brown skin. Limbs writhe against battens, lips swell with beatings, eyes bleed, jaw cracks, wrapped in brown skin. Shackled, starved, raped, gouged, hunted, choked, lynched, poked, injected, stripped, drowned, expelled, trampled, airbrushed, kneed, medicated, gassed, gunned down, down, down. Years of white knuckles and heels kick up dust clouds in cotton fields, ghettos, tower blocks. Brown skin burns, turns flesh to dust, 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 fills nostrils, clogs windpipes, until I can't breathe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, we were going to we said Peter A was going to read Species of Reply, but Peter cannot be with us today. So I'm going to do a difficult thing and put someone on the spot and ask them to read Peter's poem. Peter's is the first in the anthology, and the person that I'm going to put on the spot is Richard. Richard, if you could read Peter A's, that would be.
Certainly. Please, can you tell me the page number? Please, can you tell me the page number?
It's the first poem in the book.
Oh, yes, right,
yeah.
Thank you. And can everybody hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, fine. So this is Peter A's Species of Reply Einstein wasn't wrong. To witness the word spill, I could hardly wait. Would he accept that denial's not appropriate? And for a moment, he acknowledges the reality, seeming to experience nanoseconds of clarity, confirming a partial, apparent acceptance of solid scientific evidence that the first modern Briton was black, but then make sure his interpretation of the incontrovertible revelation pleases those affected by jingoistic diseases. Finding these words. I belong here. This is 2018. Nothing to fear from a Mesolithic fossil. Nothing against him, but nothing in common. Struggling a bit with the DNA findings though. Cheddar Man sounds more light than dark to me. However, for the sake of discussion, let's say this minor blip occurred way back, in a time so distant that it's almost irrelevant. Luckily, during 10,000 years of British history, this glitch was erased from our proud ancestry. But if it had not, he concludes, a nightmarish tragedy which doesn't bear thinking about. Imagine me and my people still proudly patriotic, but dark of colour, having to yell at paler people, nothing against them, but nothing in common, that they should go back to where they came from, to where they belong, not upon this sceptred isle, this green and pleasant land. And I'm very pleased to be able to read that on behalf of Peter A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. Thank you. So the other thing that happens with poetry readings is that, you know, we can have readings like this, yeah, where it's one poem after another. But what I also find works really well is if we intersperse them with conversation, with comments, with questions, with suggestions, arguments, even protests are also allowed. Who wants to start? Yes, Tony.
They've all been great, but there was something that just, I don't know why, Miss Agard, Sandra, great poem. You took me around the world of blackness, and you mentioned so many names, but for me, Cynthia Jarrett. I remember Cynthia Jarrett because, you know, she was going to be deported and it all got a bit rough and she died. And out of all those names that you said, so many to mention across the wide spectrum, but that one just like, oh gosh, yeah, I remember Cynthia Jarrett. So many names. So what I'm saying is that there's so many things and names and stories and pitiful situations that if somebody like you doesn't bring it back up to the surface, it gets lost in the ether of time.
Thank you. And
thank you for reminding me of Cynthia Jarrett.
I definitely, these stories, and there's so many. I mean, that was just a fraction of it. Yeah, just a fraction. Thank you.
Can I just add to that is how fortunate you were to have that education, Sandra, and a father also that appreciated what it is, what the contributions have been, really, because I didn't learn anything at all and knew nothing that I haven't sought out myself. So that's great, you know.
I know, I was very, very lucky. I mean, I had a teacher who took us New Beacon books in London, one of the foremost bookshops in England. But we, as Hugh Boats and myself, our English teacher, Miss Cowell, she took us to his shop, and that was when it was his front room. So we were able to go to, you know, before it became the bookshop, we really went to the front room, and it was, yeah, we were, when I tell people this, that I had teachers like this, I remember that same teacher, she bought in the original Billie Holiday, when Lady Sings the Blues was out, she brought in Billie Holiday into the classroom, and I was hooked, you know, and this voice. So I was very lucky to have really, not everybody was lucky. My sisters who went to the same school, they didn't have that, but I you know, I was very lucky to have really good teachers who really, really cared about us. And I had black teachers as well, which, you know, I had a geography teacher, Mr. Lindsay from St. Vincent, who was just amazing. So yeah, I know I was a very, very lucky person at that time. I mean, and Centre Prize, the bookshop Centre Prize in Hackney.
I know Centre Prize.
Yeah, it was instrumental in myself as a young writer, and places like Commonwealth Institute. I mean, we as young writers, we had a workshop with Cameron Brathwaite. It was wild. I mean, when I did, you know, it was just incredible. We met a Chevy, J. California Cooper, you know, Audrey Lorde, Toni Morrison, incredible.
Insane.
Mikey Smith.
Yeah, oh my God.
I know, we were really lucky as young people growing up in that time. And obviously we were the same area as Linton. And so yeah, very lucky.
Yeah, very lucky. Amazing.
Thank you.
We need one more person who wants to say something, ask a question, comment, shout about something.
Shout if people can hear me. Yeah, yes. I think it's fantastic that we've documented the tragedy of racism and the victims of racism, but also celebrate the proud tradition of black and white and Asian people fighting back at racists for the last 45 years. A picture behind me is the funeral of Blair Peach in Southall. The funeral coffin has been carried by Sikhs, Muslims, black, Caribbean, white workers in Southall. And Blair Peach was a white New Zealand teacher who was fighting the Nazi National Front, but actually the National Front had another ally, which was the British police. And the history of that in Clinton Kwesi Johnson's work and in poets' work is to say racism is perpetuated by the society it's in, and the state and the police have played a critical role in keeping that racism intact by having an armed force on the streets. And I think there's a rich history of writing through the 80s and now. We're still having the same fight, but poets have a critical role of being on the front line of calling out the state. So I think we celebrate the fight back as well as the victims we've had.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to Blair Peach.
Can I just say something?
Yes.
That from what I've heard so far, I think what I am finding clearly impressive, not only the power that's conveyed within the poetry, but the poetry as a social commentary, and a social commentary that seems to be so accessible. So clearly the writers have a magic about them, from what I've heard so far.
Sorry, Ambrose, I'd just like to say as well, it's important to celebrate joy. It's important to celebrate joy. I mean, through years, we've gone through so much trauma, and it's continuing. But it's important to celebrate joy, and that's what I do, I think. And a lot of my colleague Laila's in here tonight. That we celebrate joy. It's important because we as a people have, if you think about it, we've been so traumatized throughout centuries, But I think it's important, and platforms like this, where all people can come together to celebrate the word, to celebrate history, is crucial. I mean, Catherine's poem, that, you know, that's just through me. It's just so vivid. You could feel it. You could feel it. The you know, the trauma coming through, and yeah, I think, and this is only the beginning. It's going to be an amazing evening. I'd like to thank you, Ambrose, very much for bringing and pulling all this together. It's just awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we will go on to Laila.
Lovely to be here. My name's Laila Sumpton, and yeah, as Sandra was saying, so important to bear witness to this history, but also equally to use joy and to make space for joy and use that as a form of resistance. And yeah, thank you so much, Ambrose, for bringing us all together during these dark and confusing times. And when we got the call for this anthology, I at first wondered whether I should even send something into it, whether it was my place to do that. And then secondly, what would be something, what on earth I should say. And I looked into my own family and racism within the South Asian community. And it is deeply inspiring to hear about the South All Rising, moments when Black and Asian communities have stood together. And I only heard about that last month. Like that, there's a real gap in the education system here. But I think it's important to acknowledge the prejudices within communities and interrogate where they came from and what perpetuates them. And there have been some strong South Asians for Black Lives Matter groups set up on social media, and I just hope that that alliance and that space can continue, because yeah, the community needs to have a real question and think about their opinions on some of these matters. So this poem is called Rejected, and it mentions a Pakistani newspaper called The Jung. I think that's the only word I need to define. And it also mentions a word which I only learned about recently, which is Habshi, which is Urdu for slave. Rejected. Hospital smock replacing suit. He's tube threaded by a window too high for trees. His whiskey smuggled in shampoo bottles. Tupperware curries with hot buttered naan ordered in Urdu. We pilgrim here, bring you the jung. Remember, once you signed treaties, you brokered deals. But now you are just a wilting plant, placed in the sun, waiting for water, needing tending now. But not anyone, not by their hands, no. And you say a word I've been shielded from, Habshi, a slave. And we crumble down, shamed and fuming, chase after heels, scramble stories that don't add up to the cuts he's caused. We know their sting too, but haven't suffered this, its rusted barb, and watch him refuse all black care, as proper doctors and all good nurses are white, preferably, or Asian sometimes.
Thank you, Leila. Thank you. The next person who was going to read was Lily Silverman, and her poem was going to be about Reshan Chaus, who was a school went to school in London, but it doesn't. I don't think Lily Silverman is here. I didn't see Lily Silverman come in. Maybe someone else can read Lily Silverman's poem. Do we have any volunteers? Those who've got copies.
Someone who's, if you don't mind, someone who's invisible.
Barbara, is that you?
It is me, yeah.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
But if someone else would like to read it, who's more suitable, I'm happy for that.
Oh, let's have Barbara.
Yes, let's have you.
What page is it, please?
All right.
I'll find it actually.
It is on page 119.
I've got it, thanks. So, Rashan Charles, Dalston, Hackney, bins and street furniture set on fire, pictures of a young man on a poster in the flames, the words, "This could be you next," beamed live on the news through the night. At home I watch, my leg in plaster. I know Ringsland Road, but that secure feeling that this pain is not mine. They repeat his name. I freeze. Not Rashan. My son's school, me on playground duty, not Rashan, the boy you wanted to wrap up cold. Not Rashan, who stoically accepted the good life was not for him. Yes, Rashan, on the CCTV footage held down on the floor, suffocating, posted to YouTube, and we watched him die. The police claimed Rashan was taken ill. An officer intervened to help him. Not true. Yes, we are angry. The boy wincing in the sun, third from the back, school photo, struggling with so much. Child protection register in my class, year 3, shopping for the elderly, nursing small kittens. Yes. Rashan, struggling to breathe. A member of the public entitled to sit on him. The policeman with his fingers in Rashan's mouth, resisting arrest. You know Rashan, you know he processes information differently. Be careful of the media, because Rashan was gentle in it. Rashan was also 20 years old. He could have been your friend. Rashan Charles died the 22nd of July, 2017, corner of Middleton Road.
Thank you, thank you, thank you very much, Barbara. Thank you. And then Panya is going to come in with a slightly different rhythm.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to share my poem and including it in the anthology. I really appreciate that. My name is Panya Banjoko, and I am a poet as well as an archivist and as also a researcher. And people always think you can't be all these things, but you can. It is possible. You just need to think creatively, and then you can merge everything all into one. I'm finding this evening deeply emotional. And one of the things I said to myself after watching the public lynching of George Floyd is that while I have the privilege of breathing, I want to use the time to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And so I'm I might read my poem and then I might actually bow out of this because I'm finding it too emotional, really. And because I'm not the target audience. I know about the pain. I know about the hardship. I live with it every single day. And I'm just not able to really manage this. You know, so I just wanted to say that when you see me disappear, it's not because of disrespect. It's because I'm having difficulty managing my emotions. You know, you know, the poem we've just heard, Rashan Charles, that could have been my son. It could have been my grandson. You know, the reason we're here, watching how a life was extinguished on TV, how George Floyd begged. I couldn't believe it, that I was seeing somebody die in front of me on the screen, and that stays with me. And so yeah, I am finding it difficult to manage this. But the poem that I wrote is one, I guess, that speaks to the archivist side of me, which is wanting to document our presence here in this country, and to document the fact that when we came here, we came with high hopes, with optimism, expecting a better future, and that it never materialized, and it still hasn't materialized. So my poem is called Streets Paved with Gold. She lived in the same flat for 40 years until she cracked, spilling to the four walls of a splintered house that echoed. She wanted to spit back in their faces. Sometime in the future, she may be remembered for more than a moment, as more than just a stack of untold narratives boxed and shelved. She spent her time worn to a glob, trying to make the dream work, filling family back home with mother country's promise of building sprawling manors. After that, she used her days learning how to swallow tears until they streamed inside her, pushed against her innards. She couldn't find a valve. I heard she once girded her neck so tight to keep it all from spilling out that she split her gut. She's never been the same. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you, Panya. Panya, before you disappear, Panya, you see how see this thing. You know, we're not going to let you off this easily.
Yes.
Yeah. Remember how when we were coming in, we suggested that you also maybe pick one poem by another poet that you could maybe recommend, speak to, or read. If since you've warned us that you might disappear, maybe you could tell us about your pick.
The poem I looked at was the one actually directly beside mine, This Black Body. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, please.
Okay. This Black Body. It's by Tanisha Barrett. This is how they wage war on the black body. They get you from outside in until it becomes inside out. They tell you you are not wanted. They teach you to hate this black body, the deep brown eyes, the black curls between the thighs, the wide set nose and thick lips that curve into a frown, the curly hair that should only be seen as a crown, strong arms and strong legs add fuel to the fire.
Thank you. And could you also say something about why you picked that poem?
Because, you know, and especially as a Black woman, our body is so politicized. You know, we are told we have, you know, we're celebrated for our physical kudos, and we are streamed into being athletes or into music because we have rhythm. I have none. Or, you know, and the whole Black woman's body, how it's been sexualized, how our hair has become politicized. You know, I think about my own childhood being dark-skinned and growing up and being called tar baby and names like that, and, you know, being made to feel ugly because you have dark skin, and the world replicates that. You know, it's very rare that I see a dark black-skinned woman on the TV. And it spoke to me for all of those reasons and more. Well, I'll need some help with my counselling and therapy now.
Thank you, Panya. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Panya.
Thank
you.
Panya, please take a moment to read the chat. You've got some beautiful messages.
Okay, I will. Okay, let me hide now.
So we will we'll come back to Richard. Richard, you had Richard. How do you pronounce your surname, Richard?
Hello, everybody. My surname is pronounced Burt. It's a variant of the usual spelling from the Bristol area.
That's also interesting because we've got a strong, really strong voice from Bristol, but you live in Leicester and have lived in Leicester for some time. You also have 2 poems in the anthology.
Yes.
And you're going to read one of them.
Yes.
Can you tell us something about the one that you're going to read?
Yes, certainly. First of all, though, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. First of all, I would really like to thank everybody this evening for some very, very moving poems and experiences that have really helped me to reflect and I hope increase my own self-awareness. And I'd also like to thank Ambrose and Civic Leicester, the Derby people involved in the Derby Poetry Festival, including you, Trevor, and people at Derby libraries. Thank you very much indeed. So my poem is Part of the Natural Order, and it's based on a number of questions I have, I suppose, in my own quest for self-awareness. One of my questions is, if I lived in Bristol in 1740, and I think some of my ancestors lived there then, what might I have believed? If the only job I knew in Bristol was making fittings for slave ships, and if everyone around me, my family, people in positions of power told me that slavery would be a good thing, what would I believe? And my poem attempts to consider, but of course not justify, beliefs underpinning slavery in 1740. And I've also asked, what about my current beliefs and current actions? What do I believe, what do I do or fail to do that future generations will come to criticise? So this is Part of the Natural Order, Bristol 1740, Leicester 2021. When my father and mother make manacles and chains, and all the men I work with manufacture slave ship fittings, and this is the only way we know to earn a living, do I accept it as right, as part of the natural order? When I know Colston School for the Poor, the Sugar House, Merchant Venturers' Almshouses, Her Ladyship's Queen Square Mansion are all founded, financed on money from the trade, Do I accept it as right, as part of the natural order? When the minister of my church tells me slavery is the only way Africans can be saved, tells me St. Paul bids slaves be obedient to your masters, do I accept it as right, as part of the natural order? When prelates, politicians, sugar house owners, the mayor, all tell us the city's prosperity, stability, slaves and citizens' welfare depend upon the trade, do I accept it as right, as part of the natural order? When intellectuals, great men of the universities, expound their theories that Africans are only one step above senseless beasts in the great chain of being, do I accept it as right, as part of the natural order? And now in 2021, do I act on my belief that Black Lives Matter? Bow my knee in deep respect, treasure our journey together. What injustices, inequalities do I still take for granted? What today do I still accept without question, accept as part of the natural order? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. We had about Blair Peach. Manjit talked about Blair Peach. Prabhu is going to tell us about his poem, which again speaks to what you mentioned, Manjit. Prabhu Gupta, if you introduce yourself and
Sure. Prabhu Guptara, actually, and I'm based in Cambridge. I'm a poet, but I'm also a publisher, though I don't publish my own work. I actually publish very little poetry, hardly any poetry, but I am a publisher as well. That's probably enough on myself, so I will go on to just briefly say thank you to Ambrose for kindly including my poem in the anthology, and give you a little bit by way of background. Since the murder of George Floyd, a considerable number of poems have been written, of course, on that. This poem casts the eye back over the long struggle, not only against police killings of blacks and those of whites and Asians and others who have been supporting the struggle for racial justice, but the poem is also concerned with wider political and economic injustice and oppression around the world, of which racial injustice is a part and a symbol. The poem is written, as you heard from Ambrose, in memory of Blair Peach, the white New Zealander, who's already this evening been mentioned also by Manjit Sahota. Blair Peach was killed by members of the SPG, a specialist unit at the time in London's Metropolitan Police Forces. Blair Peach was killed during an anti-racism demonstration in Southall in April 1979, probably long before some of us on this call were born. Public dismay at the murder of Blair Peach, as well as the police cover-ups following that, combined no doubt with other contributory factors, led to the 1981 Brixton riots. Those led to the public inquiry by Lord Scarman, with consequent profound changes for the better in the law. There are advantages to living in a democracy and in a free society, however imperfect those might be. A school in Southall is named after Blair Peach. The National Union of Teachers has, since 2010, given the Blair Peach Award each year to recognize work on equality. An anthology of poems, One for Blair, was edited by Chris Searle in 1989. An album, The Two-Tone Story, is dedicated to Peach's memory. Linton Kwesi Johnson's name has already been mentioned this evening, and there are many people who wish to keep Peach's legacy from being forgotten or extinguished. Before I begin to read the poem, I should mention, for the benefit of those of us who do not speak Scots, that in the Scots language, the word Blair, as in Tony Blair, and in the context of our poem, of course, Blair Peach, the word Blair means simply field, as in a farm or a plain or a meadow. But the word Blair also carries the secondary meaning of battle, since any open meadow or plain or field could be and was used for battle. So here's my poem, Dare to Cross, in memory of Blair Peach. You stood, Blair, white against white, till in this land growing brown, you were by white, struck white. Who was Blair Peach? We asked the children in Blair Peach School, and they do not know. The winners of the Blair Peach Award have never heard the lyrics of Ralph McTell, never sighted the radiance of Peach. Crossing the boundary between New Zealand and this country, crossing the boundary between this world and the next. Did you glimpse why the Emperor Zhu Haokon yellowed China by the flames graying his own navy? Or why the Emperor, why the Tokugawa Iemitsu blooded his own people? Did you suddenly spot why Argentina declined from being the richest country in the world? Did you foresee Russia closing under Putin, America under Trump, India under Modi, England ruled by the people you resisted? They want to freeze what you were struggling to keep flowing. You lost color, we gained. So we dare to cross the boundary, take the Blair as our own. We breathe peach air, peach blood flows in our veins. We Blair, glare, flare, peach. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. For me, it's going to come in with, again, take us into a slightly different direction. So for me, you come in, you introduce yourself, and then talk about your poem. We can't hear you.
Muted. No, I'm muted.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Fumi, and I just want to say thank you for accepting my poem for the anthology. It's called Martyr for Humanity, and it's on page 3. And this poem is about internalized racism. There's one day I was on Facebook and I was just sort of flicking through things, and I saw a very pretty African-American girl speaking in a live video, and she was talking about George Floyd, and she said that he was being considered a martyr, and he wasn't. He was actually a drug addict, and she you could tell from her accent and her demeanor that she was quite educated. And she said, Black people are the only race that championed dysfunction. And she quoted an academic that had said this. And it was a scenario I didn't know how to react to. The chat was running, lots of people were putting comments in it. And I was reading the comments, and there was a lot of comments saying, you know, encouraging her and praising her for being so honest. So I started trying to read and say, who's writing this? And then there was one woman that wrote, you are a, you know, you're a good example to your community. And I was like, I mean, I could hear the racism even in that statement. And I wondered I knew that the young lady speaking must have targeted this group of people, because it wasn't just random people. They were obviously from maybe a particular organization, I don't know. I could tell that they were white, and I could tell that they had particular political affiliations. So I logged off. I mean, I was confused. Do I join the chat? Do I argue? Do I, you know, in the end, I just logged off. And so when the call for this anthology came out, that was what was at the front of my mind. And I saw how deeply rooted and impactful racism can be, and how complex it is. You know, racism against yourself, how does that come about? And the idea of your community, when it should be a common humanity. You know, even though this young lady was playing to this gallery of people, they didn't accept her. So that's the background of the poem. So I'll just read it. She went live on Facebook saying that she was sorry for the family of the deceased, but his face was not worthy to be painted on walls. He was a druggie, she said, not a martyr. Quoting an academic in Ivy League tones, she argued that the Black race is the only race that celebrates dysfunction. You're an example to your community, a Southern Belle wrote in the chat, inspired by this young African-American woman. Your community? I thought, logging off. Hopefully, she from my community will one day understand how it is that George Floyd is a martyr for humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Fumi. Thank you very much. Thank you. Charles Lauder, you have a connection with the US, don't you?
Yes, I do. Hi, Ambrose.
Hello, hi.
Thank you for including me in this anthology. It's quite humbling, and this is such a powerful evening to be a part of. As you say, I grew up in Texas, and I have been writing poetry about racism a lot recently, looking at my own family's background, looking at it, how it just pervades the culture. It's like what you said earlier, Ambrose, that racism needs to be a conversation. And I think that white people and white writers need to participate, but not to just say, oh yes, racism is bad, but to look at themselves and say, how do I perpetuate those ideas? What do I do? What are my actions? Because we all say racism is bad, but like in the US, with George Floyd and Brendan Taylor and everyone, it still continues. There's still inherent racism. There's still institutional racism. And I think it's until we look at ourselves and say, what am I doing? And that's what my my poems about racism are about. It's like holding up a mirror, because when Obama got elected as president, people on the right went, racism's over, we're all done, we're good now. But it's not true. So anyway, so that's what I look at. And I don't wish to appropriate Black voices or Black words. This is me addressing other white people and going, okay, what are you doing here? What are we doing here? So my poem, I live in Leicestershire. I've lived in Leicestershire for the past 20 years. And my poem that I'm going to read, Milton on the Hill, is based on 2 incidents that took place in Leicestershire in a couple of the villages. I live in rural Leicestershire. And they take place, one happened in my sister-in-law's village and one happened in friend's village. And it's a lot about Black space versus white space. And it's where, you know, if a white person suddenly sees a Black person in their designated space, they get all fearful and frightened, and as if they don't belong. It's happened like in Starbucks. It happened at universities where the young female Black student was in her dorm and a fellow student called the police on her. And it even happens, I know in Cambridge, I saw a video of, I believe it was a Black doctor who was driving in Cambridge, and the police pulled him over because he said, I've never seen you in this neighborhood. Black people don't go in this neighborhood. So it was like admitting on camera, yes, this is what happens. So the poem's called Milton on the Hill. And the man spied on the bridle path, shimmering, vaporous, slow in gait like a predator through grass, is black. Parents waiting at the school gate ask, does he wear a backpack? Our village is tasked with isolation, like an open wound, wary of infection. A Jamaican lived here for a season, drank in the pub with his white wife's son. Are you visiting? We asked. Our childminder is on the back lane when the man falls in step, asks her name. He's a carer for a chronic smoker in Norden Heath. Going for a walk is the only way he can breathe. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you very much. Tanisha, we had Tanisha Barrett. We had one of your poems. Panya gave us a rendition of one of your poems, and she also talked about why she picked that poem. Maybe you could come in with I don't know how had you what were your plans for today?
Yeah, I was planning on reading both, but actually, yeah, Panya, she read it so beautifully, and it was again so lovely to hear like her take on it. And I think I've been feeling quite similar to her. You know, this is a wonderful meeting, but it's very heavy, and it's a lot to sit with. So I just want to say again, like, thank you for everyone who's shared, and yeah, just the rawness and the experiences that we have as, you know, people of colour. It's rough. So I don't know, this might be a bit unorthodox. I'd like to ask you what you think. There's no pressure, but would it be okay if I still read 2 poems? But one of them is actually about Black joy and about rest. It's not in the anthology, so it's fine if not. But I just thought it might be nice.
Definitely.
What you've done is you've added complexity. You've added complexity that had not been planned for.
Yeah, that's fine. It's fine if not. It's fine if not.
What do we think? Do we let her read that one, or do we insist that she reads one from the anthology? From the anthology?
I think she's planning to read both.
Yeah. Okay.
We've got all night. We've got all night.
Okay. Yeah. So you see, the chair has been overruled.
Let her read both.
Yeah.
Power to the
we
people.
go with what you were planning.
All right. Okay.
Democracy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so a little bit about me as well. So yeah, my name's Tanisha. I was born in Coventry in the West Midlands. I live in Bristol now. I've been here the past maybe 7-8 years. I'm a mental health nurse and educator. So a lot of my work is, it's all around mental health and liberating us from narratives, that hold us back and that kind of thing. But yeah, I'll read this poem and I'll talk a little bit about it afterwards. This is page 20, so Forgetting Blackness. Do I pass? Can I make you forget my blackness through education or art? Maybe money will do it, or the postcode of my address. That jumble of numbers and letters might make you forget. Protect me from your violence, your malice. Maybe if I talk like you, straighten my hair so the coils fall in line, will you see less of it then? Will that make my blackness disappear? Can I pass? Will you let me pass? So yes, that one, I mean, it's obviously quite explanatory, but I think it also goes back to what was being spoken about before, where, the issue is not with Black people, the issue is not with us, it is with the people that project their ideas onto us. Racism is the issue, and I think it's a terrible thing, isn't it? But there's nowhere that we can hide, and I think for a lot of people, I'm also queer, so the idea of passing is quite prominent in my life. Am I passing as straight? Am I passing as this? Am I passing as that? How safe am I in all different spaces? And I think this is the first poem that I wrote after George Floyd was murdered. Is that sense where there is nowhere that we can hide or get away from it, whether we are educated, whether we have money, whether whatever it is, we straighten our hair, do whatever it is that we might do. The issue is not with us. And I think especially we spoke about, people getting pulled over who are doctors, people in, fancy cars who are celebrities, footballers, people like Mo Farah getting stopped at the airport in Germany, all this stuff, it doesn't matter. Even if you're famous, racism will come for you. So yes, that's that poem. And then I'll read this other one. It's about a future world that I hope is waiting for us. It's a new world. Conserving energy is more than a trend. You can say no to family and friends and it doesn't cause offence. They understand it's not about them. At work, needing a few days or weeks to take it slow doesn't fill you with dread, because there is no consequence. This place was built with humans in mind. We have arrived in all of our queerness with sparkle and glitter to spare. We are not concerned about acceptance from family or peers. We are not fighting for rights or respect because we're the norm now. Shame and stigma are reserved for those who choose to perpetuate hate. Old ways have been scattered to the wind, dissolved like snow after rainfall, washed to the gutter. Rest has been calling. Finally, a break from bobbing and weaving. The balls of my feet have stopped aching. Once it was eternal fists, and now it's open palms. Dark-skinned kids are not taught to work twice as hard. They are not striving and fighting to belong. They are free to be just as they are. This place was built with humans in mind, and that means that wrongs have been put to right. In this new world, colour is not a burden, it's a blessing. Black excellence is still here, but we can be mediocre too. I can get crap A-levels and still get a house with a view. I can walk the earth in pursuit of beauty and joy. Pause, breathe deep, lounge like I have days to spare, lie under duvets because sleep is a form of self-care. We can occupy this place or that, cross borders without getting questioned or attacked, find freedom in blazing sun and midnight skies, live like it's not a luxury to enjoy our lives. We're here creating new customs and rights, living like joy and pleasure are our birthright. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Melo Baku.
Hey, hi. I'm next up. Ah, Thank you, Tanisha. I was loving that. So, and I was identifying as well. I do some facilitation in workshops with people who use mental health services. So it's a beautiful thing to do as a mental health nurse. Salute you. And yeah, can you hear me? I'm not on mute, am I?
We can hear you. We hear you fine.
Cool. So I write, I sing, I perform, and facilitate. And this piece, that is the only piece I have in the book, is on page 13, if anybody wants to know. But I kind of love that you would be present with me as I read. I think I'm better off the page, personally. It's called They Matter, ingenious title. And actually I wrote it in 2015. And it was, I actually do forget their names, say their names, and I do forget their names, but I think that it wasn't Trayvon, it was maybe Tamil Rice. There was a vigil, and I kind of wrote it for that vigil in Leicester Town Hall Square. And at the time, I did a little bit of sort of flash research, as is my tendency. And I was looking at like the lynching laws. I thought, I can't remember how I got to it. I think I was watching Dr. Cornell or Professor Cornell West. If anyone's heard of him, he's an interesting, quite radical philosopher. Maybe he's not radical, maybe we just think he is. And talking about the lynching laws and that they were never repealed. But they weren't repealed because it was superseded. So it's like, we don't need those we don't need to repeal them because we have now laws in place. For example, like, we don't hang people anymore because we've said don't do anything racist. And I just thought at the time in 2015, but they needed to be repealed on their own merits, you know, because I mean there's still like lanes, like lynching lane and stuff in America and that kind of thing. So this is where this came from. It's called They Matter. Oh, 2018, apparently they were repealed. I just looked at, I did another bit of flash research. So They Matter. I heard the old lynching laws were never repealed, that they still stand like strong southern trees, and who swings from these as if it didn't matter. In such statutes, fates of lives are sealed. Here is the strange fruit of an old disease. Black men and boys still being deleted, and history is repeated, and history is repeated. A hole in the chest, a shot to the head. A mother distresses her child, watches a white vest turn red, watches a man alive become dead as if it didn't matter. A shot in the back as a boy runs away under attack for staying out too long in the wrong place, for wearing the wrong face. His attacker gets off on a replay, his attacker gets off on a replay, as if it didn't matter. As headlines become bylines and bystanders grow tired, so black lives get sidelined as if they never mattered. Turning into stories to be kicked around, to service politicians' aims, media games, picking out pieces to inflame, as if they were on a mission to make things stay the same. Meanwhile, in real time, black men break laws unwritten, forgetting they do the things forbidden, like reaching in pockets for mobile phones, like walking out late, like walking alone, like remembering that they're free, but forgetting that freedom shouldn't be exhibited too freely. What freedom is this? Freedom in tatters when land of the free can't see Black Lives Matters. From the Supreme Court to the roadside cop, we see those that ought to protect perpetuate violence. What justice is this when guns don't stop? When your skin gets you redefined as a threat? There's no time for silence. No time to pretend it doesn't matter. In time, what matters to one matters to all. We see them fall. They matter. Thank you. And I have been given the privilege of reading somebody else's piece, and I have chosen, it's kind of split between two, and we'll see how we go, time willing. Selina Nwulu, who I believe was Poet Laureate actually, I think it maybe 2015, so some kind of synchronicity there, for London, young poet, laureate, and am I even saying laureate? Laureate? And it's amazing. Well done. Thank you, Ambrose, for this invitation, and I love that I'm in an anthology that has Selina and Lulu in as well, and all of you. So this is I love this. It really speaks, I think, to younger generations as well. A Model Scouts Litany, and it's prefaced with Valentino's African-themed Spring 2016 show featured bongo-style drumming and had models in cornrows wearing bone necklaces, feathers and safari prints. 8 out of the show's 87 looks were given to black models. We're not hiring many black girls this season. Too much sass, bad attitude, Jezebel, ink blot, too much, chunk, ratchet, coming for you, too much. They just don't have the right aesthetic. Too much spice, thick lip, nappy knot, ink blot, Bartman bounce, suffocating you, too much. We're following what sells, too much, temptress, jungle fever bite, secret crotch creep, silent shudder, wet. Too much bruise, an ink blot spoiling the clothes, too much. We're going for a very specific look. Too much choke, rage, hip jut, grit, overspill, cheap sell, spoiling the clothes, an ink blot spoiling the clothes. Too much European. These girls tend to have fewer curves. Keep it simple, unsoiled, neat. Keep it straight, whip straight, tame, flowing. Keep it clean, pure, snow, chaste. Keep it clear, flowing, mild. Keep it chic. Keep it current. Keep it perfect. Keep it now. Keep it. Thank you. And Ambrose, do I have another 1 minute?
Yeah. I think you've got 2 minutes. I'm sure you've got 2. I love it. Keep going. Yeah, 2.
So I love this one. I was brought up in a church, aka cult, and this speaks to me. It's Giles Dornay, and it's page 32. I forgot the last page. Sorry, I think that was page 99. Selina Nwulu. So this is page 32. Burning churches. Burn down your own church, not that of others. Set free your symbols and let them return. Allow your altar to a neighbour needing a table. Pass on your candles to those in a dark home. Donate your robes to those cold and shivering. Melt your statues to gold for others to spend. Then, from your own ruins, set out with nothing but a light step, and let the heart be opened to the sacred in all that lives, outside these great walls of where once stood such holy ground. Thank you, Ambrose. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Melo. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone who's read. One of the other people who has given apologies is Ravel Shade Fairman, who was going to read Strength from page 38. Now I'm going to do this thing that I do sometimes, where I put people on the spot. This time I'm going to put Catherine on the spot. But before you read Ravel's poem, maybe you could talk a little bit about the one that you had picked, that you wanted to, that you were going to read.
Yes, I was going to read No More Silence by Maureen Umguni. Apologies if I've mispronounced her last name. Did you want me to read that, or just read?
Okay, maybe we do both. Maybe you start with Maureen's and say why you chose that one, and then read it, and then we go to Ravel's.
Okay, the reason I chose this, it had felt like a bit of a twin to the one I had written. And there was something about this whole idea about, which some people have mentioned, where it could be your brother, it could be your son, it could be your nephew. And actually, it is all about us. So I was just really struck by how she captured it in this poem, really. No more silence. I write because I am sad. I write because I can no longer be silent. I am choking. It hurts. All the pain. I am weary. I am overwhelmed. I can't breathe. It's just the black men, they say. No one kills the women. How can you not see? Killing my husband, killing my daughter, killing my neighbor, killing my voice, you have killed me. Your feigned ignorance, your denial, you shatter every piece of me. Every day, we can't breathe. Today, I choose to speak. You have kept me in bondage for too long. Angry black woman, you call me, killing my voice. I deserve to be angry. Angry about lost lives, lost opportunities, lost dreams, and broken promises. You are strangling me. I can't breathe. Thank you. And so you'd like me to read Ravel's? You're on mute, Ambrose.
Yes, thank you. Yes, yes, please. Okay. It's on page 38.
Yeah. This is titled Strength. It wasn't just a seat. Sitting at the back of the bus stood for more than that. It ensured we knew our place, forever lost. It reminded us we would always have to take extra steps to arrive at that same position. It showed us we weren't part of this society, literally partitioned. Until Rosa parked herself on that seat and refused to be moved. She could no longer approve the abuse, decided to dispute in order to improve the conditions of our people. They disapproved, came in suits and boots to accuse her in groups. They felt it was illegal for her to protest their evil. Even though it was peaceful, it was lethal to try and empower the people. But I wonder how she felt. Was she the willful and determined, unafraid of the crosses stood burning? Was she scared, yet overcame the fear to stand for truth, regardless of the strange fruit hanging from trees by noose? Irrespective of how she felt inside, she decided to take a stand. I can't imagine how much bravery that took to refuse such commands, such demands, going against their plans. I can't imagine, but I need to gather strength for the people, to speak up for the feeble, because without me or you, there is no breakthrough. I cannot change the world's view of what they deem to be acceptable, but can refuse to be moved until the conditions of our people are improved, instead of turning a blind eye to the truth. So, which one will you choose? Thank you.
Thank you. Now, so when we were putting putting the anthology together was difficult. For another reason why it was difficult again is exactly for the reasons that that Claire mentions in the comments, that because it could be really difficult going through the submissions, and the submissions are all talking about these really heavy things. How do you balance it? How do you put together an anthology that's not too heavy, but at the same time, how do you do it in a way that doesn't trivialize, that acknowledges the difficulties that are in the issues that Black Lives Matter is responding to? Because actually what we are responding to is systems of oppression, where if you are Black, being Black, it can be life-threatening in some environments, where there are some spaces like what Charles talked about, how if you're seen in those places, the assumption is that you don't belong, when in fact, for example, in Britain, there have been Black people here for a long time, very long time, which is what the opening poem in the anthology also alludes to. And then the other challenge was in putting this event together. Who reads? Who doesn't? How do we do it? Whose voices do we? Who gets heard? But then the reason again why, speaking for myself, why I did this, why I put the call for submissions together, is because we need to have these conversations. We need to find a way of having them. And some of the responses that came back were from people who were commenting, who were saying that you have mentioned this person and that person and that person, but there's nothing about this person or that person or that person. All these are true. So the proposal that is built into the launch events is that actually, all 95 of us who contributed to this anthology, what we could do is we could talk to our local libraries, or talk to our local writers groups, or talk to our local poetry festivals, and ask them if they'll be interested in or willing to organize similar launch events. And then each of us could also curate a reading where we select poems from the anthology, and also identify people in our localities, in the places that we live, who could read. And ideally, the idea initially was that we have more conversation between writers in localities and writers featured in the anthology. I'm looking at the time now, it's 8:30. We started at 6:30. The plan was that we were going to have an hour and a half. It's been 2 hours. I'm happy to continue. If you are happy to continue, I've got all night, and I don't know. Trevor, what do you think?
No, I'm happy to continue. I was wondering if, kind of building on what you just said, if as I inveigled Cecile and Henderson to join us, and if either of those have got any comments, really, particularly around that thought about how not just poetry but creative writing as well can actually make for a better world. Or anybody else, actually.
Who hasn't spoken?
Yeah, I mean, for on that specific point, Trevor. I mean, for me, I don't think this is the same for everybody. I wouldn't. I honestly don't think it's the same for everybody. But for me, the point of creative writing, the things I tend to read myself, are the things I think that things that change things, and they don't always have to be like huge, great big changes. They can be like micro changes. They can be changed in people's DNA, as it were, that's kind of what I tend to like myself, and I think writing is. Good writing does that. It doesn't have to come straight at it. It can be kind of oblique and subtle in all sorts of ways. But I think that's what good writing, for me, that's what good creative writing does. And it's distinct from other sorts of writing as well. I mean, there's all sorts of, writing's great anyway. But that's what good creative writing does for me. But that, I'm not saying that's the same for everybody by any means. That's it. I got nothing more to say. Somebody say something else.
Somebody did say just eat. Can I say something, Mr. Ambrose?
Yeah, sure. And then Melo also wanted to say something.
Melo, you can go first because I've already spoken. Go on.
Thank you, honey. I've had my hands up for a little while, but I don't think that's it doesn't matter. Yes, Henderson, thank you. I love what you just said. And it was a very quick one because people are leaving, and I was just trying to write it into the chat. But in case you don't know, if you're on depending what device you're on, you can save or export this chat. It will save your private messages, yours, not other people's, and it will save all of the public ones. So anyone who wants to keep a record of, the connections that have been made, if you're on the right kind of device, a laptop or a computer, you can export or save it. Handy tip. That's all I had, sorry.
Yeah.
I don't mind following that up. Yeah, I write and I post most of my stuff onto Facebook. I've been writing since 2015, and I think for a better world is that I always say write, put it out there, because the amount of times that I write and somebody will message me privately and say, wow, I just needed that today. It was just what I needed. Or what you find is that if you have a period of time where you don't write and you think, I'm just chilling out, I can't be bothered to write. And then somebody will say, oh, somebody who's never liked anything, who's never commented, will say, oh, I've noticed you haven't put any writing on for a bit. So thing is, get it out there, put it out there, because you'll be amazed how you can lift, and that people out there who just need it on that particular day to write it, or they could just read it for joy and pleasure, and it put a smile on their face. But whatever you do, write it, get it out there, because it really does make for a better world.
Laila, you wanted to say something?
Oh, yes. Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for creating this space. It's been some really powerful, but also really nourishing poems, and just really brilliant. We can all be together here, and I'll keep my I'll keep looking for opportunities to keep this going. But yeah, just Sandra and I just wanted to mention another opportunity for writers of Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds. We're editing a poetry and short story anthology with the Arachne Press, and do help us spread the word. We are looking for poems or short stories on the theme of maps or mapping, and you can take that like as broad or as you like. It doesn't literally have to be about a map. Sandra, anything you've got to add? Oh, the deadline is the 14th of April.
14th of April.
14th.
Yeah, and it's a great opportunity to get your work in print. It's free. It's free, and it's poetry and short stories. And yeah, as a young writer, I keep referring back to as a young writer. You know, any avenue to get your work out there was wonderful. That's why, Ambrose, this is wonderful to see this publication, because this is how it was back in the day. And it's just lovely to see this. So yes, this is a great opportunity to get your work out there. And yeah, and it's going to be audio as well. So it's going to be a lot of opportunities for it.
Claire?
Okay, Desmond. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so just to say, it's been a brilliant evening. Thank you so much, Ambrose, Trevor, and anyone else that was involved in the organisation of it all. It's been really inspiring, interesting, thought-provoking, so thank you.